Hello, Shiver Seekers. Are you ready to follow us into the unknown? I'm Cynthia.
And I'm Stephanie. You have found the Dark Oak.
Listeners, you know I love a surveillance footage case, and today I am bringing you a doozy. Today I'm going to be telling you all about the murder of Missy Bevers.
Welcome to the Dark Oak, the mystery podcast with purpose. Each month, through our charity, the Branch of Hope Foundation, we give a portion of earnings from our Patreon and sponsors to a nonprofit organization related to the first episode of the month. If you'd like more information, head to our website, thedarkoak.com, or hang on to the end of the episode and we will give you all the details.
Well, thanks, Steph. And before we get into Missy's case, you and I have to talk Micah Miller.
You promised updates, and I need updates.
I have a little one for you. We still have a lot of unanswered questions. So 2 weeks ago, we presented Micah Miller's case, and we left off talking about how just that week, the FBI had done a raid on John Paul Miller's home.
Isn't that wild that we had planned to cover that case on the week the raid happened?
So crazy. So crazy.
Kismet.
It is. And we still don't know what came of that raid and what they were looking for. So I'm pretty sure another update's going to be coming. But what I can tell you is on November 6th, so just a couple days after that, John Paul Miller was arrested on a single charge of third-degree assault and battery. He was arrested for assaulting a protester.
Protesting him?
Protesting him in the church, yes.
Okay. Well, we already knew he had some anger issues.
Right.
So not shocking.
It's not, but at the same time it is, because it's like, man, you're not even trying to hide it.
You know you're in the spotlight. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Harassing protesters. So we don't know. There could be more charges coming from the FBI then, right?
Could be.
So he's out now.
Yes, he has bonded out now, and we'll see what happens. But I think it's just more confirmation that the guy's got some stuff going on.
Any updates on the church? There were a few comments on our social media about how the church needs to be closed or discredited or something. Has there been any movement there?
So I'm on Solid Rock at Market Commons website right now, and according to this, it's closed and opens at 9 a.m. on Tuesday.
Okay.
Which would be tomorrow morning.
So still going then.
It appears, but I'm sure there's probably going to be more to come there too.
Yeah.
Because as we discussed 2 weeks ago, John Paul Miller was asked to step down for a period of time to heal and to see how things developed after his wife's death. So,
I mean, I would not be shocked if he had misappropriated church funds or something of that nature. Because remember, we talked about how he kind of put himself as the end-all be-all at one point.
Honestly, I would not be surprised to hear really anything that he'd done that was shocking and upsetting, just because I don't have a lot of good feelings for this guy. So nothing's going to surprise me at this point. I mean, I think to assault a protester when you know you're already in the public eye, pretty bold.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what are you not willing to do, quite frankly?
Okay. Well, more updates to come, I suppose.
More updates to come. Listeners, if you hear anything, let us know. Again, if you're in the Myrtle Beach area and you know anything about this church or these people, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely an interesting case that is currently unraveling.
And I mean, I did a few posts again on social media and I tagged it as Micah Miller needs to be remembered. And that's how I feel I view this case. Of course, we want to know what's happening with John Paul, but more than anything, Micah's life is important. And if it was just bringing a bad guy to the surface so that law enforcement can prevent him from hurting anyone else, then that's something.
It is. And, if you haven't listened to that episode yet, definitely go back and listen. But again, the saddest part of all of it is we did lose Micah, who was, by everything I read and saw, somebody who was an asset to her community and to her loved ones. And that's the real tragedy here.
Yeah. Agreed.
Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you about another really tragic case. This story takes us to April 17th, 2016, which was a very rainy day in Midlothian, Texas.
Okay, so this was not that long ago.
No, this is a pretty recent case.
Okay.
Beginning before dawn, the thunderstorms continued throughout the day and into the evening, and 45-year-old Missy Bevers was scheduled to teach a fitness class outside of Creekside Church at 5 the next morning. So that evening, Missy posted on her Facebook page, quote, "If it's raining, we're still training," end quote. And then she gave the time and location of the class with instructions to meet inside the church building instead of their usual spot in the parking lot. In the event, it was still coming down the next morning.
Okay, I love her positivity. And I love a rhyme almost as much as I love a pun.
Do you love a 5 a.m. workout class?
That is where it ends for me. If it's raining, I am not training.
Well, the next morning came, and shortly after 5 a.m., a student of Missy's fitness class entered the church. But instead of being met with the expected smile and encouragement that her students always received, this student found Missy laying unresponsive on the floor, surrounded by blood and broken glass.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Wow.
Tools and a large hammer that would later be determined to have belonged to the church were found near her body. And later that day, Missy would be pronounced deceased.
Oh, well, that turned very quickly. You are not wasting any time on this one, are you, Cynthia?
Stephanie, we're at the Dark Oak.
Yeah. You didn't even ease me into it.
No. Unfortunately, no. Terry Missy Bevers was born on August 9th, 1970 in Graham, Texas. She was fun and outgoing and made friends easily everywhere she went. She married Brandon Bevers in 1998, and together they had 3 daughters. Missy had previously been a teacher who worked with students with special needs, but she decided to be a stay-at-home mom for the first several years of her children's life. But as the girls got a little older, Missy felt that urge to do something for herself, and so she became a Camp Gladiator instructor and began holding Camp Gladiator boot camps at Midlothian's Creekside Church of Christ, which was only about 20 minutes away from the home she shared with Brandon and her daughters in Red Oak, Texas.
Missy is so relatable. That's us.
Except for the fitness, for myself. I'm speaking for myself only. I wish I had the physical health that Missy had. But yes, everything else I could totally relate. And, in all seriousness, I thought, I know that drive that, okay, your kids are past the toddler age. And now you're like, let me get back to who I am.
Yeah, but this podcast is that for us.
Exactly.
This is the thing we said we want to do something for ourselves and for each other, where you kind of get to step away from that mom role a little bit.
Yep.
Even taking the time off to research these cases at a time, that's a time that I can just delve into my work and I don't have to be mom all the time. You can kind of change hats a little bit. So I relate to that. She decided to take it on the fitness route. We decided to go into the unknown, but I still get it.
Right. I think most mothers probably can. I think we all go through that same kind of journey where it's like, okay, I'm not the woman I used to be, but I'm also more than just a mother or just a wife.
And as your kids grow, when they're babies, they are so all consuming. And then when they need you a little bit less, what do you fill that time with?
Right. On the fateful morning of April 18th, 2016, after finding her body, one of Missy's students called 911 while another called Brandon to let him know what was going on. Now, Brandon had been out of town on a fishing trip, but said he would immediately rent a car and begin the 9-hour drive home. So imagine trying to make that 9-hour drive, knowing what you're coming back to is nothing good. First responders arrived at the church at 5:10 a.m. and found signs of forced entry. A metal door on the north side of the building had a broken window. It appeared that Missy's attacker had broken this window to gain entry by reaching inside and using the handle to open the door.
Okay, worst nightmare. I hate those scenes in movies. I've seen it 100 times and they play out in my head like that creepy old hand, even if it's not a creepy hand, just a hand reaching in the window and pulling up the lock. I hate it.
It's terrifying. And
I hate it.
you have a solid front door, but mine has a glass
Oh, you
window.
do?
I do, yeah. So yeah. Thanks for that visual.
I just have 100 just sliding glass doors, and you have to have special locks for those too. When we moved into the house, they had like the chintzy little ones, but the way mine are, they're the more like modern ones, so you can't even use like the broomstick. When you had,
yeah,
because they all like fold into each other, if you will.
Oh, yes.
So we had to get these special like metal locks put in that made me feel a lot more secure. But all doors are susceptible, and they all kind of freak me out a little bit.
It's true. It really is. And here we literally have an actual case of that happening. So it's not just in the movies. Missy's Ford F-150 was parked under an awning on the south side of the building where she'd left it earlier that morning. The truck's passenger door and truck bed lid were still open. Her keys, wallet, iPhone, purse, iPad, and gun were all still inside the truck.
Oh.
So she carried a gun. Now, this is Texas.
Yeah.
So a lot of Texans are armed.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
But that is interesting that she carried a gun, but it was still in the truck, not with her.
Well, all of it. The fact that all those things were still there. It definitely speaks to a motive.
Right.
We know what it isn't.
Right. And that's going to be a big question in this case, as you will see. What is the motive here?
Okay.
Now, obviously, one of the first things authorities wanted to do was check the church's surveillance camera footage. But unfortunately, as is so often the case, the cameras outside of the church were not functioning on the day of the murder. However, the cameras inside the building were operational, and no one was prepared for what was going to be caught on them.
Okay, I cannot wait.
It is this footage, Stephanie, that I believe catapulted Missy's case into the public eye. And there are probably very few of our listeners who aren't at least somewhat familiar with the details of Missy's case because of this footage. Based upon the footage, along with the police reports, here is what we do know.
It was Mr. Green with the candlestick in the library.
You know, I just played that game with my kids the other day, and that is not my favorite game to play with little ones because they just don't get it.
Right.
You should have seen me and my husband just like, oh, show me a card. Show me that, like, anything we could do. My kids have such a warped idea of how to play the game Clue. If they ever actually play it for real, they'll be like, this is not the rules.
My kids always just keep asking me. They'll see a card from like a different player, and then they'll look to me and they're like, how do you spell Scarlet? I'm like, well, you can't tell me. I would have just put an S, then you'll know. Like, and they're like, oh, okay. Because my kids get really competitive.
Yes.
My kids are very competitive in games. They're only 7 and 10, but I will tell you, you do not want to play Monopoly with them. They are for real.
Oh, I believe it.
They will take you for everything that you're worth. So they really do want to follow the rules and are a little bit ruthless. But yeah, when it comes to the spelling, that's their undoing.
Good to know. Good to know.
Okay, so I'm assuming it was not Mr. Green with the candlestick in the library. So tell me what you saw.
Okay. At some point prior to 3:50 a.m., the killer broke into the church, again, probably through those metal doors with the broken window. And there's no camera in that part of the building, and there's no alarm system. So authorities can't say for sure what time the suspect broke in. But this person first appears on camera at 3:50 a.m.
Okay.
This person is in head-to-toe tactical gear, including a military-style helmet, cargo pants, gloves, and a vest clearly marked police.
Oh.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that the general consensus is that this gear is probably inauthentic, meaning that it's most likely not utilitarian in nature, but more for aesthetic purposes. So, for instance, you can purchase an actual bulletproof helmet for thousands of dollars, or you can purchase a helmet that looks like a bulletproof helmet, but is not actually going to do you any good in the middle of a shootout. Most people believe that the gear we're seeing in this footage is the latter. It also appears that the fit of this gear is not correct for this person's body type. The equipment appears to be far too big. And obviously, in order for this kind of gear to be effective in its intended purpose, the wearer would need to be able to move comfortably in it. So that further leads us down the path that this probably isn't, say, an off-duty police officer wearing their own tactical gear. Instead, it was probably purchased by someone, again, for more aesthetic purposes. Or if it is actually authentic equipment, it didn't originally belong to the suspect as it wasn't fitted to them.
So the general idea is it's more like a costume.
Correct.
Okay.
But not like a Halloween costume, more for this one instance. Because it appeared to be of good quality. It just didn't appear to be an actual, maybe, SWAT team member.
Okay, got it.
Or some person like that. Now, the next 30 minutes of footage, some of which has been released, shows this person walking through the building. They're going in and out of rooms, down hallways, at times using what appears to be a hammer to occasionally break something or try to open a locked door. In portions of this video that have not been released to the public, it's alleged that the suspect spent some significant time in certain rooms of the building, such as the kitchen. And what led people to come to believe they spent this time in the kitchen, I'm not sure, but that is something that kind of floats around, that there was significant time spent in certain rooms.
Well, if I'm up wandering around at 4 a.m., I'm going to need some coffee. So I don't know if that was the aim, but that's what I would be doing.
You know, that makes total sense. I want to show you this footage, Stephanie, and you and I have not talked about this prior to this recording session here. So I just want you to watch. It's 2 minutes worth of footage, and I want you to watch it and then just tell our listeners what you're seeing, and then we'll discuss it after.
Okay.
Okay, so describe to me what you saw in that footage.
Well, it's very similar to how you presented it. There's a guy looks like he's there's a person wearing some kind of tactical gear, walking with a kind of peculiar gait.
Okay.
It's a very unique stride that they have. It's almost like the positioning the hips is a little funny. I don't know if that's just like the camera angle, but that's just my interpretation.
Okay, interesting.
And this person is walking around with no real haste.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of killing time, checking things out. At one point, he stops. It looks like a door is locked. He kind of casually tries to open it with what looks like a crowbar to me of some kind, but doesn't really put a ton of effort into doing it, into actually opening it, and then just kind of moves on.
Okay, so it sounds like you kind of saw what I saw. In my opinion, despite this person obviously being somewhere they shouldn't be, in full tactical gear, causing maybe minor to moderate destruction.
Correct.
This energy of this person is actually quite calm.
I agree. It's like killing time.
Yeah, it's almost childlike in my opinion.
I agree.
They're just
like, well, what's in this room?
Right.
Well, what's in this room? But there's no urgency.
Right. They almost look bored.
Like even at the very end, the hammer swinging, like kind of hitting the wall, but it's just like casually like hitting a wall.
Right.
It's like I'm waiting for somebody.
Right. It's not even like I'm trying to break down this door.
It's just like, well, I got this hammer and I'm just kind of swinging it around.
Right. But not even really trying.
Right.
Okay. That's what I see too. A lot of people agree with what we're seeing here. Now, what's strange about this is, if this is a burglary gone wrong, the suspect, at least in the footage that we just watched, the footage we've seen, they don't appear to be taking things. To me, it looks like this person either knows exactly what they are looking for and they're just gingerly walking around the church until they find it, or they have no idea what they're looking for. Maybe they're not looking for anything and they're just meandering around the church killing time.
My feeling just from seeing what that short 2-minute clip is, they're just wandering around killing time. They snuck literally, and the childlike thing is what comes up to me. They snuck out of their window. They have this little outfit on and they're out killing time. I don't even think they're waiting for anybody.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Okay.
I just think they're wandering around.
That's very interesting. A lot of people agree with you. And it's because of this behavior that a lot of people believe that Missy's murder was a matter of her being in the wrong place at the wrong time, because this person does not appear to be Like you said, waiting around for someone to walk in so that they can attack them, leading many people to believe that Missy may have just interrupted this person doing whatever it is they're doing, and then they felt they had no choice but to kill her.
Based on what you just showed me and not knowing anything else, that would be my conclusion.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Now, if you don't believe that that's the situation here, then you may fall into the camp who believes that this person knew that Missy was going to be at this location at this time. And in this footage, they're just waiting for her to arrive. But again, if that's the case, the behavior is very strange, because you would think if they were waiting to surprise Missy, they would be waiting by the door or standing by a window watching for her car to pull into the parking lot. So
I wouldn't be wandering in and out of rooms.
no,
That would not be what I was doing.
no. And this is what is just so baffling, I think, for so many people, because it's almost like neither scenario makes sense. Because if it's a burglary gone wrong, the person doesn't seem to be in a hurry to take anything.
I don't get the sense of burglary at all.
So you think someone just broke into the church and just walked around in a SWAT suit?
As weird as it is, yeah, I do.
And then maybe Missy walked in and then
Well, say that is
an
the
altercation.
Well, yeah. I mean, say that is the situation. You're just walking around. You're not going to expect somebody to show up at 4:45 a.m.
Okay, good point.
You know, I mean, you break into a church, are you going to expect somebody to surprise you?
Right.
So I'm saying, if you're going to kill time wandering around just checking out buildings, you're not. If you go into a church, you're not going to expect somebody to be there at that hour.
Okay.
And so I think this suspect being surprised is highly likely.
I think those are very good points. Absolutely very good points. So you think, just based on what you just saw, that maybe this person's just likes to break into buildings.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are people who enjoy doing that.
And maybe he would find something that he liked, but maybe it's just the thrill of being somewhere you're not supposed to be.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's as possible as anything, quite frankly. It's believed that Missy was in the middle of transporting her exercise gear from her truck to the church when she encountered the suspect inside the church. Now, reportedly, there is surveillance footage that shows Missy walking down the church hallways before her murder, but this specific footage, if it exists, has never been released to the public. Missy's autopsy determined that Missy had multiple puncture wounds on her head and chest that were consistent with the tools the suspect was carrying throughout the building.
Yeah, like that crowbar looking thing and the hammer.
Right. The cause of death was a head wound. To help narrow down the motive, detectives asked the church staff to look around and determine if anything was missing. Nothing appeared to have been taken, and there were also no other robbery attempts at the church prior to this. Later that day, the police held a press conference during which they released a 7-second video clip of the suspect walking around, and authorities asked anyone who recognized this man to please come forward. Now, you may be thinking, how are we going to recognize someone in head-to-toe tactical gear? But you saw what a lot of other people have seen. The suspect had an unusual gait.
I agree. I mean, the way he swings his legs and his hip is unique.
Very, very unique. I encourage you, if you have not seen
And I'm saying he. I don't know that it's a he. I'm just saying he.
Okay.
It looks like a he in the outfit. Obviously, I don't know who's in it.
Right. Well, the police, as of this first press conference, they said it he.
They thought it was a he as well.
A man. And I encourage you, if you haven't watched this footage, go watch it. It's 2 minutes long. You'll be able to better visualize what we're talking about here. But it's
surprisingly clear footage as
It is.
well. It's very, gosh, as far as surveillance footage goes, I actually think it's very good.
Oh, it definitely is. It definitely is. And you can see that the suspect almost like turns their feet outward away from their body, especially that right foot.
Yeah.
And that entire right leg is carried in a unique way.
Yeah.
Instead of a typical bending at the knee, it's more of like a swinging out, more of like a stiff leg.
Yeah.
But I did see some bending. I felt like I did see some bending.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in, people's walking patterns, but so it's unusual. I don't know what we're really looking at, but it is an unusual gait. And authorities were hopeful someone would recognize this person's walk. The following day, the police released an additional 19 seconds of footage and retracted their earlier statement that the suspect was a man, saying that the suspect could be male or
Well,
female.
it's true. It's hard to tell in that outfit because it looks like a, a SWAT outfit that traditionally a man would wear. That's
Mm-hmm.
why my mind went there. But
Mm-hmm.
truly, I don't know.
Well, as I've already mentioned, in the years since Missy's murder, this has been a highly discussed case. And there are many people, including myself, who believe that the mannerisms of this suspect actually appear quite feminine. When I watch this video, to me, the mannerisms look very feminine.
Okay.
It looks to me like a woman walking. It's almost like led by the hips, in my opinion, the swinging. It's a very feminine walk, in my opinion. And even, I mean, when I first watched it, I was like, that looks like a woman in a very manly getup, stereotypically speaking.
I understand what you're saying. The way they are opening the doors and things
Mm-hmm.
still looks more like a man, but I can see in the swinging of the hips, it would just be more a more feminine male.
Which is absolutely a possibility. Absolutely a possibility. I just thought it was really interesting that when I watched it, I thought, oh, those movements look stereotypically feminine. And then I start reading that a lot of other people agree with me. Because, it's always interesting when you think something and then suddenly you realize like a bunch of other people agree with
Right.
you.
Right.
It's almost confirmation. So I thought
So
that was
I wouldn't say
interesting.
it screams woman to me. However, I do see how some of the walking movements appear more feminine.
Okay, I gotcha. I gotcha. On April 22nd, during another press conference, police released an additional 2 minutes of footage, again asking the public to pay attention to the mannerisms and the suspect's walking style. At this time, police also obtained search warrants for Missy's LinkedIn accounts and her phone records, and these records revealed that Missy had been having extramarital affairs.
Oh, okay. So we have a pool of possible suspects.
Potentially, at the very least, I would say we might have a potential motive.
Okay. Well, so far, outside of just surprise, I don't see a motive.
Right. Now, Brandon confirmed he knew about at least one of these affairs, but it did appear that Missy may have currently been in a relationship that Brandon did not know anything about. In addition to the affairs, police also learned that 3 days before her murder, Missy had showed one of her friends a message she'd received on LinkedIn from an unknown male that both women considered creepy. Now,
Oh,
right. Now, the friend told police she couldn't recall the name on the account from which this message has been sent, and I couldn't find anything about what exactly the message said, so I don't know much more than that, but worth mentioning. On May 20th, during yet another press conference, authorities stated that the suspect's height was somewhere between 5'2" and 5'7", and the suspect appeared to be light-skinned, although that could not be confirmed. Now, 5'2" to 5'7", that's quite a range. Like 5'2", even for a woman, that's a petite woman. Like that's below average.
right.
5'7", I think might be
Well, I don't know. How tall are
average.
you?
I'm 5 foot, and I'm always the shortest one, no matter where I go.
Yeah,
So only 2 inches taller than me. That's pretty short.
that is pretty short.
But
Okay.
5'7", is that average for a woman? Because I think that's even
I think
considered
it
short for a
is.
man.
I think that's short for a man. I think that would be average because I'm 5'6", and I think
Okay,
5'5" to 5'6" is pretty average.
right,
But that would be shorter for a man.
right. Police also said they'd not ruled out the possibility of more than one person being involved. Midlothian police also released a still image of what is believed to be a 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima driving around early morning in the parking lot of SWFA Outdoors, which is a sporting good, specifically a gun store, located very close to Creekside Church.
Okay, so my thought was I was sitting here thinking, okay, man, what if this is a teenager, a 14, 15-year-old? But then you said they were driving, so they would
Well,
have had to be, well, if there were multiple people.
I don't know that what the suspect was driving, if anything. I know that the police just released a still photo of a Nissan Altima. And we are going to talk more about that car later, which is why I can say I don't know yet that we're saying the suspect was driving this. But
Okay.
they did release a photo of this car saying, do you know this car? Do you know who may have been driving this car?
Because I
Here's
think
where the
it would be
car was.
possible for a pre-adolescent to certainly to carry out this crime. We know it happens.
Right?
And that would explain why they were a little shorter.
Yeah.
If we're still thinking it's a masculine, if we're still thinking it's a man.
Okay. Yeah. No, well, my husband's 5'3". So there are men in this height range.
Right.
That's not impossible. It's just on the shorter side.
Right.
Now, the biggest piece of information shared during this press conference was that at this point, none of Missy's family, friends, or coworkers were considered persons of interest. And this announcement came at a good time for Brandon, especially because there were a lot of people in the general public who were beginning to suspect that Brandon and his father, Randy, may have been behind Missy's murder.
How?
Well, first of all, Brandon had been out of town on that fishing trip on the night
Exactly.
Missy died, and Randy had been in California at the time of her murder. So physically, neither of these men could have done this. But suspicions still surrounded them.
As in, like, murder for hire?
Possibly. But there were still a lot of people who still thought, at least for a time being, that they may have actually completed the murder themselves. I'll tell you why.
And the motive would have been Missy's infidelity?
Well, the fact that Missy had had extramarital affairs did absolutely fuel the public into thinking Brandon may have had a motive. And since he didn't present as emotional as many people would have liked, his reputation took a hit in the court of public opinion. And we've talked about this so many times, how people are expected to behave a certain way during these moments of deep grief and trauma. But we know that's just not how humans work. There's no set formula for how people behave in these situations.
Right.
Suspicion heightened when 4 days after Missy's murder, Randy Bevers dropped off a blood-covered shirt at the dry cleaners. Now, the staff at the cleaners recognized Randy as the recently murdered woman's father-in-law and thought this might be important evidence, so they turned the shirt over to the police. And hey, good for them, right?
Right.
Now, I have a little trigger warning here for animal death.
Oh.
When questioned, Randy said the blood on the shirt came from his wife's Chihuahua, who was killed during an altercation with another dog.
Oh,
And
gosh.
to add fuel to the fire, Randy Bevers walks with a similar gait to the suspect on their surveillance footage.
Ooh.
I will tell you, when this case first came out, I remember people going crazy saying Randy murdered Missy. I absolutely remember it. And them saying, look, they walk the same. And me being like, oh my gosh, they do. It must have been him.
It's such a weird walk.
It is. It is. And then you have a blood-covered shirt.
Right.
Police had the blood on the shirt tested, and it was confirmed. The blood was not human. It was canine, and unfortunately, it is true. Randy's wife, Vicky's beloved 13-year-old Chihuahua, was killed in a fight with another dog while they were visiting family in the days after Missy's death.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
I know. Vicky memorialized her sweet pet in a Facebook post that read, quote, I had to say goodbye to my feisty, furry little guy, Kilo. He was my constant companion and loved me as much as anybody ever has. He traveled over 25,000 miles with us, and I will miss him every day. Say hi to Shadow for me, sweet boy. End quote.
I mean, it's like Missy and then Kilo. You know what I'm saying? Like one right on the heels of the other. It makes it even more emotional.
Well, and I know we're talking about a Chihuahua here, but they both were killed in really vicious attacks, like violent ways.
Like traumatic.
Within days.
Yeah.
It was really, it was really yuck. In January 2017, new surveillance footage was shared of a Nissan Altima, the same Nissan Altima that was seen in the photo released in May. In this footage, we see the car, which police believe has a distinctive oval bumper sticker, turn into SWFA Outdoors, that gun store, at 1:58 a.m. and drive around the parking lot in a bizarre manner. At one point, they turn off their headlights, but then turn them back on. They park in a secluded area for a few minutes before exiting the parking lot onto US Route 287 at 2:04 a.m. So they were driving around this parking lot really weirdly for 6 minutes.
Huh. Okay.
Now, personally, I'm curious as to the link between this footage and Missy's murder, other than it happened on the same evening.
Right. Like, did they go to the church? I mean,
Well,
and I guess we don't know because the surveillance cameras were not working on the outside of the church.
right. Here's what we do know. There's an almost 2-hour time difference between the car leaving this parking lot and the suspect being picked up on the surveillance camera at the church. And the church is only about a half a mile away from the church. However, there is a clear view of the church from the gun store.
Okay.
I can only assume the police have their reasons for wanting to interview this driver. They have said they do not believe the driver or potential occupants of this vehicle to be involved with Missy's murder, but they would like to speak to them. So I don't know if that's the truth or if they're just saying that to get the driver to come forward.
Right, because the time difference is getting me. Like that doesn't make, because it's not like we saw them driving at the time of the murder.
Right. Maybe did you look across and see something happening at the church? It's 2-hour time difference.
Exactly.
Which makes me wonder if maybe they think they're somehow related. Like
Sure.
maybe it's involved. Maybe this person's just driving around looking for buildings to case and they
It's possible.
decide not the gun store and instead go to the church. But even that, there's a 2-hour difference.
The 2-hour difference to me, if you had seen it maybe even 30 minutes before,
right.
it would be more believable to me, but you're going to drive around a strip center, decide that's not for you, you go to a different area of town, but then come back to the same area. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't. That's part of why I'm like, what are the police thinking? But the police probably know a lot more than we do, so I can only assume they have their reasons.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense to me with the knowledge that I have.
Right.
To date, no one has ever come forward as being the driver of this vehicle, which also seems unusual. If they were not doing something they shouldn't have been doing, why not come forward?
And what was the hours they were in the gun store parking lot?
They pulled in at 1:58 a.m. and exited at 2:04 a.m. and the suspect showed up on the church footage at 3:50 a.m.
Yeah, it's not like somebody that's just lost. I mean, I will say this is suspicious. It's weird.
And this is interesting footage too. I encourage you to look at it because they are driving around weird, flashing their lights, parking, but you know what? There have been times, no, not at 2:00 in the morning, but there have been times I pulled into a parking lot to get in the back seat to figure out why my kids are fighting or pick up a toy that was dropped or and if somebody was watching, they'd be like, what's this bozo doing? But
the timing to
timing
me is different.
Right.
And again, it almost makes me think, what were these teenagers that stole a car? Was the car stolen? They were joyriding in it. They were hotboxing it, which I only know that term because someone stole my car and did that.
Oh.
So hotboxing is when you roll up all the windows and smoke a lot of marijuana.
Oh,
so
okay.
you're hotboxing the car.
Okay.
So that could have been a possibility. It was a stolen vehicle, and then this person maybe was high, maybe was drunk, and then started wandering around. I don't know. But
I have heard actually that theory. I don't have it anywhere here in my script, but actually I have heard some people say, based upon the behavior of the driver of the car and based upon the behavior of the suspect at the crime scene, were they potentially high or under the influence?
I could see that based on the footage that I just saw. Now, I don't think they were blitzed out of their mind, but they could have been under the influence of something.
One of the places I looked when I was researching this case was a YouTube channel of a man named Tom Webster. And he did a nearly 5-hour video on this case. And he admits he's not into true crime. The only other true crime case he's covered thus far is the Delphi murders, in which he did another several-hour video.
Which, by the way, big updates on that, too.
Big updates.
Yes,
yeah, we have a conviction. Thank God.
Hooray.
Yes. What Tom Webster says that he is really good at is investigation and finding things that are hidden. he's just really able to like find these details that no one else seems to be able to find. So he focused on this case. I'm telling you, it was a 5-hour YouTube video, and he put in countless hours researching. I mean, it was great.
Into like this 2-minute clip, or all
The
all
whole
the video,
case,
the whole
case,
Okay.
everything. One of the things he did in his countless hours of research was break down the license plate of this vehicle.
Oh, cool.
So in the footage, all you can really see, it's like whited out. Like
Yeah,
you
of
can't really
course.
see anything. Not whited out manually. You just can't see anything but like a white license plate. And then maybe like some shadows of where letters or numbers are. Again, this is a surveillance camera from, far away at night. It's raining. So we don't have a clear shot of this license plate. But Tom did everything he could to narrow down what he thought this license plate may be. And he started with researching, first of all, what letters and numbers were used on Texas license plates during the years. And then he had to figure out, okay, how long is a license plate good for in Texas? Because we have to look at all of those years. And then he compared all the letters and the numbers that they did use to the shadows on the plate and where they would hit and how many inches away from the Texas emblem and how far away from the edge. Anyway, he did all this, and he came up with probably 2 or 3 letters and numbers that he believes are pretty good chance that this is what they are.
Okay, interesting.
Even with all that work, we still don't know anything, but I do hope the police have looked at his video and taken ideas from it, because he's done a lot of work trying to solve this case, and I think he's got a gold mine over there on this case. So check out Tom Webster on this case and the Delphi case if those are cases you're interested in, because he's got some good ideas. At the 1-year mark of Missy's murder, the police announced they were still receiving tips, but were waiting for the big one that would crack this case wide open. They did let the public know that they were engaging help from other agencies, including the FBI and the New York PD. NYPD was using their advanced tracking device called Stingray in an effort to see if the suspect was returning to the area to relive the crime. If anything came of this, nothing's been released. In April 2021, the police made a public announcement marking the 5th anniversary of Missy's murder. They said they received new tips almost every day. They also provided a new height analysis of the suspect, saying that the distance from the floor to the top of the suspect's helmet was approximately 5 feet 8 inches.
Okay.
So closer to the taller side in that first range they'd given, which definitely opens up the possibilities a lot more.
Yeah, sure.
The FBI asked Dr. Michael Nierenberg, a forensic podiatrist, to study the suspect's gait, and Nierenberg stated that the person's gait is affected by the weight of the gear and the weapons. So there was no relationship between the gait and potential gender, and he concluded that the suspect's gender cannot be determined solely from their gait.
Yeah, I imagine that's probably true.
He's a doctor. I believe him.
I love how you said you're like, I'm not a walking scientist, or what did you say, walking expert? Yeah. But this guy actually is.
I'm not a forensic podiatrist, but
but I'm going to act like it right now.
Initially, a reward for information leading to an arrest for Missy's murder was set at $10,000 before doubling to $20,000 and then rising to $50,000.
Gosh, you'd think that would bring in some tips.
You would think so. In 2021, the amount went to $150,000 for information potentially helpful in capturing the suspect.
And still nothing.
Nothing. In 2022, a podcast called True Crime Broads discussed Missy's case with the intention of keeping people talking about Missy. The creators paid for a billboard advertising the $150,000 reward for any information that could help solve the murder. The podcasters also invited their listeners to a tree planting ceremony at a park in Midlothian. And on Tuesday, April 18th, 2023, several townsfolk stood before a young red oak while members of the media watched from the sidelines. A reddish-brown stone bore the inscription, "In loving memory of Missy Bevers," and it was signed, "Friends of TCB."
Oh, that's touching.
Very sweet. Missy's case remains unsolved. So let's talk theories for a minute. Midlothian police have told us they've released almost all of the church footage, but I think it's safe to say we have not seen all of it. For instance, We don't know if any part of that attack was captured on film.
Right.
I've heard rumor that it was not captured, but we don't know for sure.
And the pieces of Missy walking up and down the hall, there's rumors that those exist, and we haven't seen those either.
Exactly. Now, as I've mentioned before, I like to do all of my real research, but then after I've got the facts down, I like to get opinion-based information. So, for instance, I might go listen to a respected podcast to get their take, or I may go on Reddit and read people's theories. And of course, I did that in this case. There's lots of material on this case. And interestingly, most of the content creators that I really respect and often align with felt this was more of a random attack, which sounds like kind of where you're landing.
I think that's where I would lean, yes.
I do think you guys have good reasons for feeling that way. It's just not where I land. Brett from the Prosecutors podcast did bring up some good points that despite having a lot of footage of this suspect, there have been no arrests made after 8 years, which means this person is probably not someone known to Missy, probably not someone who was in her circle, because with this much video footage, they should have been caught. And the
Right.
reason why they haven't been is because there's no link.
Right.
And that does make total sense. But I still really struggle with the idea that this was just a wrong place, wrong time scenario. And I think for me, the reason is because of this footage. I understand I've not seen all of it. So there may be things that I haven't seen that would change my opinion, but I just don't see a motive for being in the building. I don't think it was a robbery. I don't know. I struggle with I'm just here walking around just because the thrill of it. Now, something that does lead me to wonder if this was a burglary gone wrong was a Reddit post I saw. So take this with a whole spoonful of salt because it's a Reddit post. But the Reddit user Tom Codler stated Missy's sister-in-law had watched all of the footage. And according to this Reddit post, Missy's sister-in-law said that Missy paused when she entered the church and she looked in the direction of the open door to the north and the open Dutch doors that you saw on the surveillance footage and the broken glass. And instead of turning around and leaving or maybe getting her gun, allegedly Missy cautiously walked further into the church. So if this was a planned attack, the suspect really took some chances by leaving obvious signs of something being wrong, because how do they know Missy's not going to walk in, see that something's wrong, and then turn around and leave? If it was a planned attack, it does make sense that the suspect may have staged the church looking like a burglary, but to do it so obviously that Missy was going to notice seems like a big chance to take. So I thought that was a really interesting point. I do think that if they knew Missy was going to walk in, that is a big chance to take, to have it look so odd as soon as she walks in.
Yeah, I think her coming in was a total surprise. My feeling is whoever this person is planned to be long gone before anybody came in that building.
Which I totally see why you feel that way, but maybe you can help me understand this, because remember, Missy is very in shape, very strong, very physically fit. And as you mentioned earlier, if this was wrong place, wrong time, Missy's not the only one surprised. This suspect is also being surprised by Missy's appearance. She seems like the kind of person who's going to put up a fight, and she's not helpless. She's not a helpless woman. She's strong. She's tough. She's a fighter. So for me, that makes me, again, think the killer almost had to have been prepared.
But who knows? So you're in there, you think something's off, but then you see someone coming around the corner in tactical SWAT gear.
Terrifying.
Yes, but at the same time, are you going to think that's an intruder? I would think someone who's wearing a vest that says police. My first reaction would be, well, maybe they're the police.
I can see that.
Now, as your mind's working, you're going to go, okay, something's not right here. Something's off. Why is there no car outside? But in that initial moment, I'm going to think they're there on some kind of official capacity. And maybe they even said that. Again,
True.
we don't have any audio.
Right. Well, and a lot of people believe that the reason for this tactical gear was so that if they were to get caught by anyone, people would be put at ease, thinking it was a police officer. I don't know. I think for me to walk in and have even a police officer standing in front of me, if I'm not expecting it in the middle of the night when nobody should be here, I think I would just be terrified. I think I would immediately go into defense mode, but
Or you just freeze,
true,
in which case we saw what happened.
true.
And whatever that suspect said
Hmm.
made her not run, whatever it was.
Or they snuck up on her when she wasn't
Or they
expecting
snuck
it.
up on her.
Right.
Yeah. I still think it's possible. I still think she was surprised, and whoever this was just took an opportunity.
Right. And to your point, we know very little of her actual cause of death, but we do know it was puncture wounds consistent with a hammer or some other type tool that the suspect was seen walking around with. But we also know those tools belong to the church, which means she was murdered with a tool that the suspect probably did not bring with them, which is unusual if you know you're going somewhere
I
to murder someone.
I don't see anywhere in this video, nothing in this video screams to me premeditation.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of people absolutely agree with you. I don't know. I can't get there.
Is it because it's just too unfathomable?
I think so.
Because I will say it is statistically, it is very unusual to be killed by someone that you don't know.
I think for me, that's it. I think for me, it's just what are the odds that this woman is going to show up somewhere that she publicly said she would be, and many people in the community know she's going to be. She posted on her Facebook that's where she's going to be. And there just so happens to be someone there laying in wait who beats her to death with the tool they've been seen walking around with.
I'd say it's not likely. It's not very probable.
Right.
But it's possible.
It is absolutely possible. It is absolutely possible.
I understand your theory. I think Occam's razor is that this person was surprised, at least in my view. Maybe Occam's razor for you is, what are the odds that they would meet in this way without someone being there prepared to
I
see
think
her?
that's where I'm going. To me, that makes them. She was murdered. She was murdered when she showed up alone at a church and there was somebody there waiting. To me, it just points to.
I can see that. As I was saying it, I was like, yeah, I mean, I see the premeditation being more likely than a chance encounter. However, based on the video I just saw, I think it's a chance encounter.
Right. No, I absolutely. For me, this one is a real mystery. I think I lean more one way, but I also totally get why you maybe lean the other. And like I said, so many people who ideas I know and theories I do normally align with are siding with you in this case. I'm just not quite there.
I just think that walk is so unusual. How has no one come forward?
Well, let me leave you with one more potential theory.
Okay.
If this is a planned murder, then we need a motive, right?
Yeah.
Could it be the affairs? Quite frankly, I can't think of any other motive at all.
Well, that would be the clear
right
option.
Unless, of course, the crime was sexual in nature or something like that, which if it was, nothing's ever been said. So I have to think, okay, the motive would have had to have been the affairs. The fact that many people believe the suspect seen on the footage could be a woman begs the question, could this woman be the wife of someone maybe Missy was having a romantic relationship with? Which brings us to Courtney and AJ Tucker. AJ Tucker was a fellow Camp Gladiator coach, and Courtney was his wife. And there were rumors that AJ and Missy were having an affair as recently as the weekend before she was murdered while they were at a Camp Gladiator retreat. Now, Courtney had knee surgery 5 months prior to Missy's death. Many people believe Courtney shared the same build and body type as the murderer, and she could have potentially had access to the tactical gear, as AJ used tactical gear in his self-defense class. And there are photos of AJ in similar gear.
Huh. Okay.
Personally, I think if that's the case, an arrest would have been made. But again, worth mentioning because some people think that's what happened. Brandon Bevers, like you, believes his wife's murder was an untargeted attack, just a random attack. And I absolutely think that's a possibility. I absolutely, truly do. It just seems a little unbelievable to me. But again, this is one of those cases where nothing really makes sense.
Right.
Because I can talk myself out of believing any one of these theories.
Right. Oh, I just hate it that no one has come forward. And it's wild too, because how many cases have we said, if only we had it on video surveillance, if only we had some video footage. And here we have very clear video footage, yet it's still unsolved.
It's still unsolved, which I do think Brett from the prosecutor's podcast made a great point. Like, how is that possible unless there's just no link? I mean, that's a great point.
Oh, I do think that's the
great
case.
Point.
Because I think they would have looked in, as you already said it, they're going to look in the entirety of Missy's circle, and they're going to be able to pick out someone
right
who walks distinctively.
Right.
And I imagine they've questioned those people.
And has a motive.
And it would have a motive, of course.
And if it was a murder for hire, because some people do believe that Brandon and Randy maybe hired someone, but again, there should be a paper trail. There should be some kind of evidence pointing to that. People don't just murder people for free, and there's been nothing.
And if you're an assassin, wouldn't you have brought a weapon?
Right.
That to me is the most telling. You're a murder for hire, and you're just going to walk around and find out what tools they have in the church.
Right. Now, I will say, I did read somewhere that the window that was broken so that the suspect could get into the building appeared to have been broken by a crowbar. And you even mentioned at one point seeing what appeared to be a crowbar. And I saw that too. Most places you're going to see it's listed as a hammer. So that made me think perhaps the suspect did bring a crowbar with them.
I saw a crowbar for sure.
To open this, to gain entry.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just not what was used to murder her, or maybe it is what was used.
You're an assassin and you use you know what I'm saying? I believe that could have been the murder weapon in this case. But if you know you're going in to murder someone, you're only going to bring a crowbar?
Well, and here's the other thing. If this person knew Missy, they should also know she carried a gun.
Right. Like, it doesn't make any sense that it's a murder for hire. Wouldn't you have done some attack outside? I don't know that I would have gone into a church with video surveillance and hung out there for an hour.
And given so much material.
You know, like, that doesn't make any sense to me either.
Right. That's the thing. It just makes no sense. The whole thing just makes no sense. And here's the other thing. We're not going to get anywhere because it just makes no sense. But say I'm just there for the thrill of it. I'm just walking around this church, breaking stuff for the fun of it. But then somebody walks in. Why do I have to kill them? I'm completely covered from head to toe. Why can't I just run away? Did they see my car? Did she try to attack me?
Well,
because she's a strong woman and now I have to kill her? Like,
maybe. And some of it I started thinking of this drug angle again. If they were on drugs, maybe it was some kind of drug induced hallucination or something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, maybe if it was some kind of trip, maybe they didn't even know what they were doing.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was Alice from the prosecutor's podcast who thought that. I'm pretty sure she was one who thought, I think there's somebody under the influence of something, and maybe that's what was happening in the parking lot a couple hours earlier. They were getting high or drinking.
And all of a sudden, again, just kind of swinging the crowbar,
right?
And then all of a sudden this horrible thing has happened.
Right. Yeah, I really don't know where I stand with this one, but it is a mystery. It's a mystery I'd love to get solved. But unfortunately, if you're right and it's just random, I don't know that it ever will be.
Not unless someone just comes out and confesses to someone.
Right.
I think that would be the only way. Or if somehow we figure out the license plate numbers of this car. But those change. Right. I mean, that car could even be long gone.
Right.
By now.
Right.
So, I know we have an Unsolved podcast, so I should not be upset, but there are those few, again, where you just don't have any answers, and this is one of them.
It is.
This is a toughie, Cynthia.
It is. So let me bring it up for you. Let me tell you about our Branch of Hope recipient for this month.
Let's do it, which is a really good one.
Yes, it's for the month of November 2024, and we mentioned Micah Miller at the top of this episode, and we chose 988 Lifeline in honor of Micah. At the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, they understand that life's challenges can sometimes be difficult. Whether you're facing mental health struggles, emotional distress, alcohol or drug use concerns, or if you just need someone to talk to, their caring counselors are there for you. You are not alone. You can call, text, chat, or they have a deaf and hard of hearing feature that you could use to reach out to them. They're 24/7. They're really doing a lot of good. So any proceeds that we make from our Patreon or sponsorships for this month, November 2024, we'll be giving a portion of those proceeds to 988 Lifeline. And if you're a member of our Patreon, you can feel really good knowing that you're helping to support that organization.
Yeah. And it's twofold. You get to support us as creators, which we really appreciate. We enjoy bringing you these cases. Some of them are well known. Some of them you haven't heard of before, but they are all victims who deserve to have answers, deserve to be laid to rest where their family can visit them. Their families deserve answers. Their community deserves justice. And hopefully we can provide some of that. 988 Lifeline is also a wonderful organization just to remember, because we're getting closer and closer to the holidays, and we know that can be a struggle for some people, but know that you are not alone.
And we love you here at the Dark Oak.
We do. Next week, I'm going to be covering a really, really horrible Thanksgiving case. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. Again, it's unsolved. It's worth talking about, but we're going to cover the murder of the Blunt family. It involves a bombing. There are children. I'm going to apologize in advance, but this family, again, deserves justice. But many of these family members were taken out from a bomb on Thanksgiving, and we don't know who put it there or why. So we're going to cover some of those details and see if we can noodle through some of that.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I tried to bring you up with a branch of hope, guys.
Inspiring. Very inspiring.
No, we need to spread awareness. That's why we cover these unsolved cases, to spread awareness. So hopefully one day we can help to bring closure and answers to, families and loved ones. So
absolutely,
there's a purpose.
Thank you guys for joining us today. We appreciate you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This episode of The Dark Oak was created, researched, written, recorded, hosted, edited, published, and marketed by Cynthia and Stephanie of Just Us Gals Productions, and made possible by you, our shiver-seeking listener. Special thanks goes to Justice Himes for our incredible artwork and Ryan Crete for our amazing music.